Hey, welcome back, everybody. Time again for one of our favorite shows this week with Wendy. The one show, the only show that gives you a real talk about the real SoCal state of mind. That's not easy to say this morning here. And it all started because Wendy, who started her career up in the Bay Area and other places, saw there was a need for something different. And that's why she created Veracity Real Estate. A company that gives you bespoke client advocacy at all price levels, something you don't often see these days, certainly not across all price levels. And through it all, she's really developed a reputation as a data diva. She gets into the data and digs through all the facts and helps you figure things out. Like today, I guess we're going to figure out some stuff that I never want to talk about, appreciation and what does that do to my future taxes someday here? Wendy, welcome.
What, you don't appreciate appreciation?
Yeah.
What's the matter with you?
I like that. We got to appreciate appreciation. Well, you know, I said to you before that I inherited a house out in the desert 10 years ago. My dad died, and I've been renting it out. And that's kind of my, ace in the hole. That's my retirement someday, and that house has doubled like everything else has. And so I inherited it. So you think, well, I don't have to pay any taxes on this. I do because of all that appreciation, right?
Au contraire, yeah. They get their pound of flesh one way or another. You know this is true.
Right. And so, what does that mean as I calculate? Are there strategies to minimize that, or is that just a big tax bite that I'm going to get someday here?
Well, just hang on to your hat and let's take a step back because, I'm going to give you perspective and analysis you can't find anywhere else.
Yep.
And part of how I do that is by surrounding myself with experts who bring fresh perspective to real estate. And before we get into the conversation about all things appreciation, let's just take a minute and talk about the market and see where the market is. And then we'll do the deep dive. Fair enough. So as you know, I've stopped measuring data on a weekly basis and gone back to the traditional month-to-date model. Thank goodness, signs of normalcy do return. So it's almost the end of the month, but as of yesterday when I pulled the data, we weren't quite there yet. We had just under 4,000 active listings, which again is less than half what we would normally see in August. It's extraordinary. 2,255 were under contract in escrow, and as of yesterday, 1,827 closed escrow. The odds that we will see 2,000 homes actually sell in August by the end of the month is 0. And that is crazy. These are tiny, tiny numbers for this time of year. The only somewhat noteworthy change, and this has caused a lot of heated debate, we're going to hear a lot about this in the headlines, is the median price did dip a little bit. It dipped 1%. So median price is down from $1 million to $989,000 as of yesterday. We'll see how the month ends and see if this is meaningful or not. The time on market, this was interesting for me because with so little activity and buyers not running into open houses and not competing to buy properties, last week when I did the numbers, it was taking a little bit over 2 months to absorb all the active inventory. As of yesterday, it was only 1.6 months. So things have actually sped up a little. And that's a function both of just the supply and the demand. Since the supply has shrunken, it would take less time to sell all of it. And that's really all this number is. But it's interesting. And the list price to final closing price ratio fell below 100% for the first time in years. Really for the first time since the pandemic began. So it didn't fall much. It's at 99.4%, but that's less than 100. So you can hear headlines screaming median price is falling. Yeah, it is.
So does that mean the sky is falling?
I think it means that it's almost September and we're seeing the normal seasonal adjustment. That's exactly what I think is happening. And that's what happens every year. I mean, you've seen my charts. They're these lovely bell curves. Prices are a little bit softer. Median price is a little bit low the first quarter of the year. It peaks into summer, late summer, and then it starts to drop again, fall into winter. And I really think that's all this means. But, if it bleeds, it leads. So the headlines are going to be that it's bleeding out. And I just don't yet think that's true. It's possible. We have to wait and see what happens in coming months.
The headlines definitely are predicting the next zombie apocalypse and that we're all going to die because of falling housing prices.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what does it matter if we have appreciation? We're going to be dead. We won't pay our taxes anyway because we'll be gone. So there. All right.
But in terms of returning to normal, we're heading into the Labor Day weekend. What would you typically be seeing this weekend? Is it typically a hub of activity of looking for new homes, or are people checking out and just enjoying the last bits of summer?
Actually, Labor Day weekend historically is slow and soft for open houses and showing activity for that very reason, because before the pandemic at least, families were getting ready. They were in the whole back to school mode, and back to school mode kills real estate, just like usually the winter holidays do as well. So yeah, I don't expect much in the next day or two to filter in terms of end of August sales data. It's going to be really, really soft, and it's going to be soft going into September, and people will doubtlessly interpret that as no one's buying houses. It's like, well, yeah, there are fewer houses selling, and there's also less than half as many available to sell. And that's part of what we're going to talk about, because we're going to rip off the Band-Aid and talk about what the industry wants you to know and what I think a lot of people don't want you to know, because it's more salacious to have you on the edge of your seat.
Is this going to hurt? Should I hold on to something here?
Do you have
Should
any Xanax back there?
Yeah, should I bite a
And
bite
if you
into
do,
a
please
stick?
share.
My industry is not for the faint of heart. I have to tell people something they don't want to hear no matter what. Either I've got buyers who are annoyed because things aren't dropping like they want, or I've got sellers who are annoyed because prices aren't accelerating the way they want. So it's kind of my job to get out a whip and a chair and tell people stuff they don't want to hear. So
You
don't
really
scare
are
me.
a little bit of a lion tamer mixed with grief counselor.
Oh my God, that's so perfect. I do carry black armbands in my car. Oh, Kara. All right. So for those of you who don't know her, of course, I've got the lovely Kara Stewart here with me. She is my chief brand officer, and she helms her own PR and marketing company, Alta Luna. So
And apparently a stand-up comedian as well. So.
really, we'll see her at the Improv soon, I'm sure. All right. Well, yeah, I don't even know where to begin, Kara.
Well, let's talk about these numbers. We always are talking about the genius and why you even do the show and why you've made your name in real estate is because of, we jokingly said lion tamer versus grief counselor, but you do walk your clients, investors, even your peers in the industry through the data to help them understand what's really going on to make real decisions. And right now at this time when despite what the headlines say and others want to believe, the sky is not falling, there isn't something that's hair on fire right now, we're coming back to a little bit more of a normal, it actually should be a time to pause and think strategically about our investments in our home, right?
Exactly.
I've heard you talking with your clients about this.
Yes. Well, and I was telling you that many of my clients become my dear friends. When you're spending that much time with someone, helping them buy something as intimate as their home, you develop bonds of true friendship. So, and one of my dear friends is like myself, unmarried. And I was like, holy crap, he's going to have a lot of gain. So I chose to do an in-depth market analysis for him. And I was right. He has, well over his $250,000 exclusion for capital gains on his home. And it's not that I expect him to sell his home tomorrow, but to your point, I sent him an email with this saying, all right, it's time for you to get strategic. When you first bought the home that has this amazing view, you talked about remodeling it to enhance the view throughout more parts of the home. Get planning. Start that plan, get that in motion while you have time before you are even thinking of selling it. Start doing these capital improvements to whittle away at that gain.
And with that one conversation, you started reaching out to some other former clients and, who will be future clients. And we really began this discussion of looking at, the pandemic caused so many global shifts from rising costs for virtually everything to employee shortages. We won't even talk about what's this called, the quiet quitting, but whatever. It's making everything more difficult for everyone.
Yeah.
But if we're going to focus on real estate, we know that homes have increased slightly in value. So, it seems like rising home values are good, but like everything, it's not without some adverse impacts, right? So let's talk about those today, Wendy. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And this run up in value is exactly, it's something we all need to be talking about. And I'm shocked no one else is.
So let's talk about something that no one wants to ever talk about, insurance. We've heard horror stories about uninsured or underinsured homeowners. And with the rapid run-up of home values, we probably can assume that many homeowners are falling into this category, and I bet a lot of them don't even realize that they have now. So why should homeowners be concerned about home insurance?
It is a many-layered onion, and it is so heavily nuanced. Even for me in the industry, I have to consult my professionals and say, okay, help me understand this aspect of insurance. Because insurance for your home, just like for your car or anything else, only insures exactly what it says, and exclusions can be very nuanced and very specific. So you have to get into the weeds with your insurer. The biggest, most obvious issue today is that many people are going to be underinsured because their insurance was established before the COVID run up in value. And that is coupled with the cost to fix or replace their home, their structure, should it burn to the ground or what have you, has also increased because of what you just mentioned, with the supply chain issues, with the increased cost for labor, and all of these other things. So you need to get in touch. We all need to get in touch with our homeowners insurance brokers and discuss, okay, what do your actuarial tables say it would cost to rebuild my home were it destroyed? Because I want to make sure I'm properly insured. And I would venture to guess half of us are underinsured. So that's just one aspect of it, of being underinsured because of increase in value. And the other thing that people are not talking about or thinking about is, while we are aware that there are a whole lot more 100-year fire events and these incredible natural disasters that are hurting homes, and now we're seeing about, after the fires and the drought and all of this, now there's flooding in certain areas. The actual FEMA maps or the hazard maps for the state and the country are being redrawn. So the cost to insure your home could change, and what they will insure could change, not because your home moved, obviously it didn't, but these maps around us are being redrawn. You need to call your insurance carrier and make sure you're adequately insured for the additional threat. And that's something that you can't just know.
Yeah.
You've got to call a professional and consult with them.
And this isn't an issue that we can be ostriches with our head in our sands, you know, whether or not we want to get into a political discussion about climate change. It is real. And I know your position and our position here is we don't care if you think it's not, it is.
Right.
And you know, we're sitting here entering Labor Day weekend, and there is a week-long heat advisory,
Right.
and we're monitoring fires as we speak right now.
Right. I mean, thank goodness they're not predicting Santa Ana winds. Thank God. But still, I mean, think about those poor people in Laguna Niguel. I tremble at the thought of how many of them didn't have adequate insurance, you know, and many of the homes were completely destroyed. So these are very, very real issues. They're not sexy and they're not fun. But if you're listening, please promise me you will immediately call your insurance broker and make sure you are adequately insured. And it may mean, to keep the cost at an affordable place, you have to juggle around a little bit with your deductibles. But it would be better to have a $2,000 deductible or a $5,000 deductible and not be $500,000 underinsured.
So your message is right now, because of this unprecedented time, to call your insurance broker. But really, how often should homeowners be thinking of this anyway?
I would like to see them do an annual review. And in my opinion, a really qualified property and casualty insurer should be checking in with their clients once a year. But that's functionally, it's very hard to do, you know, because profit margins are weirdly lower than you might think, and they have to carry a really high client load. So it really, the onus is on us as consumers to put it on our calendars and do an annual check-in. And your insurance broker is not a real estate expert per se. They're reading the same headlines that you are, that give them national data, which is completely irrelevant because your home is in a micro market, as they all are.
Because what do we say? All real estate is
Hyper local. Right. So I'm happy to help any of my clients or anybody, you know, if you want this, to get a really detailed market analysis for your home's current value as of today. If you want to give that to your insurer, happy to do it.
Well, for those who haven't been having these conversations, can you walk everyone through a few pointers of what that conversation would look like? So I'm a homeowner. I call my insurance broker. I'm really not sure. What do I need to tell my broker? What are some conversation points, some data points I should be ready to share?
You know, I like to really dumb it down. And when I call my professionals, I'm like, talk to me like I'm a 6-year-old. If something happened and my home was destroyed today, do I have adequate insurance to replace it? And if not, where do you see the weaknesses? I understand that, you know, fire zone maps are changing. Am I subject to anything different today than I did when we started this insurance? And if so, what? You know, and make them explain it to you until you understand it. That's their job.
And to your point, they're not real estate professionals.
Right.
So we can't assume that they know the home's current value, and really homeowners shouldn't even be guessing their current value. You've mentioned a document before of help you get a broker price opinion. How would you work with a homeowner on that, and what does that all entail?
It's interesting because broker price opinion is something that I personally became really aware of after the 0809 crash. Because what was happening then, so many homeowners were in financial distress that their lenders were reaching out to credentialed brokers and saying, hey, we've got these, 100 homes that we need to know what they're worth, and we're not going to go and send appraisers out to all of them. But we understand that you are an industry expert. Please render a broker price opinion. And it literally follows the standard appraisal form. So, the USPAP appraisal format is what we use. We became very, very good. I know I did during the downturn of doing these broker price opinions. So we get really into the weeds in terms of how to compare comparable properties to determine value. And it really is a lot more science than art than you might think. So you need to have a broker who's really familiar with these. At one point, I was doing about, I want to say, 100 a month, on top of just doing my regular job.
Wow.
So you get really good at it. So, and it's important that you have a really, really detailed, granular estimate of value that breaks down the value of the building separate from the value of the land. And I know me, when I called my insurance broker, it happens to be Farmers, but there's many great brokers out there, and where your home is will dictate who the best insurer is for you, because some specialize in different types of communities. But having said that, I am happy to assume my home is worth more than it is today, because I don't think it's going to burn to the ground today. It may burn to the ground in 5 years. Well, I would like to have, overestimated the value, so I'm not caught with my hands, empty.
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially right now as we're trying to survey the other headlines of, are we entering a recession or not? Mm-hmm. And then, as you mentioned, there's back to school. Kids need books and braces, and we're entering the holiday season. And there's so many costs, and where can we save a few bucks?
Right. And no one wants to talk about paying more for insurance premiums, but how would you feel if your house burnt to the ground and you were short $100,000 to rebuild it? Then what?
If it only meant a few more bucks every month now, instead of being without the ability to rebuild a home then.
Unfortunately, it's something we can't ignore.
Okay, great. So everyone, please, for Wendy,
yes,
book a time right now in your calendar of when you're going to call your insurance broker. If you don't have one that you really like, or you're not even sure if the person you are working with is a good value for you, go ahead and shoot us a note or give us a call, and we can give you some referrals that are not connected to Wendy or anything,
No.
just good folks she works with.
Yeah, people that my clients have had good success with. But yeah, you may be surprised as your kids age, you may be able to offset some of the home expense for insuring with the auto expense. And of course, insurers are giving deep discounts because people were driving significantly less. There are a variety of things that might be able to be massaged to bring the overall insurance package to a palatable place.
Okay, so since we haven't been talking about enough depressing topics, let's go on to one that is so much fun for everyone. The issue of capital gains taxes. Where are they cheering? Paul, can we have cheering or something?
He's just over there taking his Xanax.
Yeah. So it's real on both federal and state levels. Before we even get into it, just a quick definition so everyone is working from the same terminology.
Right. Okay.
What is and what are capital gains taxes?
So capital gains tax is tax on the appreciated value of property upon sale. And this is obviously applicable to investment property as well as your primary residence. And for the purpose of most of my clients, I focus on their primary residences because they all have that. Some of them have rental properties, and that's really a separate issue, because honestly, it's easier to ameliorate your taxable gain on an investment property because you get to write more things off, you get to depreciate it more aggressively, you can 1031 exchange. So taking a property that's highly appreciated, selling it, and buying a replacement property that's highly appreciated, you can kick that can down the road for a long time. With your primary residence, you can't do that. So we're looking at capital gains, which to the IRS is 15% of the gain. And the state of California views whatever the gain is as just regular income. So whatever your tax bracket is with the state, that's your tax level for the gain on real estate. And I did the math backward and my head hurt because I was like, okay, as of this moment, the median price in Orange County is roughly $1 million. And we know that we're up 10% over last year. And last year, we knew we were up 20% over the year before. So if I went back to pre-pandemic levels, anyone who had a median priced home or higher that they bought at the beginning or before the pandemic, is now in an area where they could be subject to capital gains if they sold their house. And I'm not saying everyone's going to sell their house tomorrow. Of course, they're not. But my point is, I really, really care about my clients. I care about, the people that I'm close to. And I want them to understand, okay, if this is not my forever home for whatever reason, or if I just want to be careful in case something horrible happens and I have to move somewhere, how can I reduce this gain, this taxable gain? And there are strategies they can employ. And doing it before you want to sell is a really good idea. Do it when you have the luxury of time to do some research.
Oh boy, you just shared a lot. Let's unpack that. Okay. So first of all, you did cite that there are certain people who are exempted from this. So what do the exemptions look like?
So if let's just confine the conversation to one's primary residence, because I see that as the biggest risk for all of us. So if a married couple, and I'm not going to get into the politics of that, but if two people who are legally joined own a property together, they have $250,000 worth of exclusion from taxable gain because it's their primary residence per person. So they would have $500,000 worth of gain excluded. I unfortunately am a widow, so now I only have $250,000 of exclusion. So I already have equity appreciation in excess of what I can write off. So I am already starting to look at the improvements that I talked about doing before the pandemic, and now I'm like, I really need to get on it. I really need to start doing these capital improvements so I can reduce the amount of appreciation and gain. Because adding costs by investing in your home helps minimize that gap.
And this really is a region-to-region, geography-specific issue, right?
Well, I mean, not every state has capital gains. California does,
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not called the sunshine tax for nothing.
But you also said this tax gain is compounded by the federal 10K cap, right?
This is part of what makes me crazy. So capital gains is assessed on homeowners. Like I said, they're exempted up to $500,000 in gain per couple. And if you live in Middle America, in Indiana or Ohio, that's probably going to be enough to cover you for your lifetime. Because home values are $300,000 to $500,000 here. So the odds of them having $500,000 in gain in the lifetime of their ownership of their home is really small. But the tax code doesn't make any allowances for high cost areas. In Southern California, well, actually the entire state, and now almost all of the West Coast, and certainly the Northeast, we're high cost areas where we have exceeded this taxable gain exclusion just during the pandemic. It's ridiculous. We have to work so much harder to save our dollars and to shelter ourselves from taxes because we live in higher cost areas.
And that's why this issue is so important to here in Orange County, because so many homeowners made a decision about where to buy or maybe even where to stay during the pandemic, and they were still caught in pandemic era thinking. We're now on the other side of this, hopefully knock on wood.
Getting more normal again.
Yeah. Can you give some examples of tax on sale that might apply to homeowners right now? So you talked about one example when we were going through some show notes about if a homeowner had a median priced home for 7 years, they'll likely have what you did the back of the envelope math. It's about $330K.
Yeah, it was like at least $350,000 in appreciation. So if it was an individual homeowner, they really need to talk about how they can make some improvements to minimize that gap, that $80,000 gap in exposure. And there are many different things we can do. I mean, obviously, we're all aware of solar. And home improvements don't have to be necessarily improvements, making the house greater. It can just be, maintenance. Is it time for a new roof? Now may be the time to do that.
And that's why this isn't an issue just if you're considering selling your home right now. This really applies to everyone.
Yeah. I really encourage all of my clients to view their home, not just as their home, but also as an investment. And there are so many layers, again, to that onion as well. So, like when I have my roof redone, I'm going to make sure that I get my attic re-insulated. And there are these wonderful green underlay materials you can put under roof shingles that make your roof more efficient in terms of keeping your home, cool in the summer and warm in the winter. And these are things you can't see, but they add value and they lower your cost in terms of utilities and living there. So there's 2 layers to this. And in many cases, adding things like solar panels or low E windows, energy efficient windows and doors Of course, it's going to make your home more comfortable to live in, cooler in summer, warmer in winter, all of that. But you can often still get tax credits for making these improvements. So not only are you investing in the home and you're saving those receipts and you're showing that you made these capital improvements, you're also enjoying, hopefully, lower costs to live there and to maintain it. And you should get some tax credits. But again, that's a highly nuanced conversation and you need to talk to your tax professional. That's why using this time before you intend to sell wisely makes so much sense. Sit with your tax professional, again, something no one wants to do. But tax planning is smart. You don't want to be reactive and just reacting to, oh my gosh, I need to sell my house because, I don't know, I broke both my legs. I need a single story, and now I'm scrambling to do $100,000 of improvements. No, that's not the way to do it, people.
No, there's a better way. Now, let's get into the issue or some topics about tax planning in just one second. But you're always talking about the intersection of rising home values and everything that we come to enjoy here in Orange County, and the intersection of home affordability and also really protecting those who are most vulnerable. The issues we're talking about right now really could actually affect seniors the most, right?
Yes, they can, because we're at a point where home values have gone up so much and interest rates are so high. And people who have lived in their homes in California, since 1972 have had a cap put on how much their property tax can increase because it's a high cost area. It's the one benefit we do have. They literally couldn't afford to sell their house and buy an equal or lesser value house because it would still cost them more. They would still be house poor. So the vast majority of our seniors who would normally come on the market as active inventory simply aren't. And it's scary on so many levels. And this is where I get on my soapbox, and I had this conversation with one of my dearest friends yesterday, and that was talk to a reverse mortgage specialist immediately, and see, do you qualify for a reverse mortgage? Because with a reverse mortgage, you don't have to make the monthly payments on the loan itself. You still have to pay your taxes and your insurance, but that could be a way that some aging people who are in homes that are not right for them could sell them and buy a replacement home by using a reverse mortgage to make that purchase and not leave them eating top ramen because they have no money. It's a scary, scary, very real scenario.
Scary for our seniors, and then the other side of that is just the housing inventory.
Right.
The traditional domino effect of where is Gen Z and younger millennials going to be able to move into.
I have one client who's a single person. And I'm not going to say his age, but he's in what we think of as retirement age. He's in a 3,100 square foot, 5-bedroom house. And he wants to leave, but we're trying to find a replacement property and we can't find one. And it's because everything has just been locked up. Inventory isn't moving. And there are many reasons for it. Interest rates affecting young people, blah, blah, blah. But a big part of the problem is these seniors that cannot right size.
Okay, well, I know there's a lot of people who listen to our show that are community minded and do work with seniors. So if you have ideas in this and can offer some other solutions too, please do contact us so that we can share out information. But let's get back into the issue of those taxes that you talked about. So you started to talk about that there are some ways homeowners can prevent being saddled with this monster capital bills tax.
Capital gains, yeah.
Capital gains, yeah. So one that came to mind was being able to offset directly, and then there are also complementary tax credits, right?
Right.
Let's tackle the first one. How can homeowners offset the gain directly?
Directly by making capital improvements. And there are a number of things that just are smart to do right now. Solar certainly being one of them, because our infrastructure and the grid, as it were, has not been improved in 40 or 50 years in Orange County. So, we're seeing rolling brownouts and blackouts more and more commonly. So it's just smart to have that and have a storage battery as well for it. But also because we're having 150-year drought, it may be time to xerosphere your landscape. So, and that's with an X, people, xeriscape. So xeriscape your yard and make it more water efficient. And there are things, I wrote an article about this, you can do, like planting trees that are actually very drought friendly, but they will shade your home and they will shade the yard and add some cooling. And the wonderful benefit of having your own trees is that they naturally filter contaminants out of the air, which I love. And they trap them in their own cells for us and they release oxygen. So it's healthier to have trees in our landscape. You can get some that are very drought friendly. They'll add some shade. All of these are things that now it might be a good time to do, and save all those receipts, because the improvements that you make, you can use to offset your capital gains down the road.
And does that also have to do with tax credits then?
In many cases, yet, but yes, but that's a very, very city specific, county specific, and state specific things. We need to do a lot of research. You really need to call your tax professional and say, okay, I'm looking at new windows and doors. I'm looking at solar. I'm looking at making my yard drought friendly. What are the different tax opportunities that benefit me here? Because it's going to be quite the puzzle. You know, there's a lot of moving parts here. They don't make it easy for us to save money. We have to do our homework.
And also what you're talking about, what I'm hearing is even just the average homeowner really needs to have this brain trust of professionals around them and lead this discussion annually, right?
Absolutely.
I heard you today just not only mention your real estate, professional, home insurance professional, CPA, tax consultant,
Tax planner.
your attorneys. And it really is, the onus is on the homeowner, though, to organize these meetings and to inform these professionals of updates every year.
Yes, and there's a reason that a few months ago I had Ton Combolisa of Combolisa McGee on the show, and she's going to be back regularly because she's a brilliant CPA, she's a brilliant accountant, and she's a brilliant tax strategist. And that is exactly what we all need. We need someone to say, you know what, if you paid $50,000 for that improvement, you're not going to get the additional rebates as if you spent $50,000 for this improvement. So just be aware and then make the choice according to what both best meets your family's needs and also meets your financial goals.
Paul, did you know these issues were so complicated?
Does your head hurt? I'm
That
sorry.
that was a very deep sigh, my friend.
Oh, my darling.
Let's take a break and just remind everybody that you do have a whole bunch of people like this that you call upon in your network. We've had a lot of them on the show. There's more of them coming up, and even more of them in Wendy's world here. So one of them is our sponsor, Ford & DiIulio. Ford & DiIulio is an Orange County-based litigation firm. They employ experienced attorneys from the big law firms in a little boutique law firm here. The founders who created this company did so on an idea that's pretty simple: aligned interest, where they don't just try and drag it out and run up the bill. They try and be rewarded for being efficient and effective, and where they engage in the relentless pursuit of their clients' goals, whether in litigation, mediation, or even trial if it comes to that. Try something different. FordDiulio.com. FordDiulio. FordDiulio.com. I'm almost afraid to ask questions because one question leads to two questions, leads to five questions.
It's quite the rabbit hole, isn't it?
It
She's
really
ready,
is.
Paul.
You know, for
She's ready.
example, you talk about removing plants. I did that years ago. I don't know that I ever really thought of it as a tax saving thing. I was thinking it was a water saving thing, and ripped out all the plants and put drip irrigation and stuff in. But I don't know that I really took advantage of the full rebates and other things that were
Right.
out there.
Because it's a nightmare to figure them out.
Yeah, I just did it. And I wonder too often if we don't just do it and we're leaving money on the table for
Yeah.
something, which leads to, I'd love to have your person come back again and talk specifically about tax planning. I've worked with CPAs through the years, and they just say, show me what you got, and they figure it out from there. And I
Right.
really want them to do is say, well, if you shuffle the cards a little different, if you did this expense now instead of later, if you do it this way instead of this way, oh, did you realize there's a rebate for that? Did you realize there's a tax
Well,
incentive
exactly.
or something?
And how would you have known?
I don't.
Right.
And I know for a fact I have not taken full advantage of money saving opportunities, nor do I have a tax planner in my life. I have people who do my taxes, which means I give them the stuff and they type it all in. And too often because there's some flexibility. I have a business, I have my personal, I have, various things. I have this house I inherit. So could I be shuffling the deck differently? I'm not looking to be clever or tricky. I'm not looking to,
Right. Not cut corners.
but it's what wealthy people do all the time.
Absolutely. That's what I'm talking
You're
about.
only using the laws that are actually there that you simply don't know about.
Yeah.
Well, and generally speaking, the government rewards those who do what they want them to do, who
Right.
who create less of a drain on society overall. So if we're using less of public utility electricity, they're going to give us a little bit of a credit for that. If
Right.
we're using less of the public water, they're going to give us some incentive for that. I believe there is still pretty sweeping incentives to remove grass and turf from our yards. But again, that's regional. So,
Right.
I need to talk to a tax professional about, does that work for this person in this address and for that address over there? Because
Right.
I don't know all this. I have to surround myself with all these great professionals.
But does anybody who makes less than multi millions, do any of us ever have tax strategists? And that's the word that struck me today here. Our tax planners. I have tax preparers.
Right.
I don't have any tax planners in my life, and yet there are difficult decisions coming ahead. Someday, maybe I'll retire or something here. Someday I'll sell this house I inherited. Someday I'll sell my house with a run-up. Someday. And I'm not prepared for any of those somedays because nobody's ever talked through the options. I don't even know who would do that. You say your CPA. Your CPA, I'm sorry, mostly just
Most. Yeah.
does the books.
That's why I'm very particular about, who I align myself with. And think about it. A lot of people are like, well, I don't want to pay that person. Odds are very good you're going to spend $2,000 to $3,000, meeting with a tax advisor and a tax planner. The odds that they couldn't save you at least that are really small.
Yeah.
So
right.
you're investing in yourself, and you're investing in educating yourself and creating a strategy that's going to save you thousands year over year over year. So it's money well spent.
And I would think most of us don't have that complicated a life. So if
Most
you came
don't.
up with a strategy, I knew what I'm going to do with this house. I knew what I'm going to do to offset certain things. You could kind of run that strategy for a long period of time. Maybe you got to update it periodically or look at it a little bit, but it's
Right.
kind of the same game
Right.
plan. I got no game plan right now.
Right. Well, there's a little bit of set it and forget it, but you have to have
Right.
the initial consultation. And a good tax planner will say, okay, your runway for this investment property that you own really is you got to sell it by 10 years for whatever reason. Like, we can't depreciate it anymore, or you have to do capital improvements, or, these are the things that you need to be
Right.
aware of, and here's your deadline for it, and plan in advance. But like I said, when we started the show today, the run up in values globally was so profound during COVID. Everyone who owns their home now has to talk about tax saving strategies. Everyone, almost no one is left without this tax exposure. And I honestly don't think that was the intention of the IRS and government agencies. I really think they intended to give us an exclusion from this taxable issue for our homes, not anticipating that they would appreciate as much as they did. And now I think it's time for some tax reform for high cost areas.
Yeah, I wonder
So-
if that isn't possible. I don't know if anybody's talking about that, but raising that exclusion because the capital gains run-up has been so great.
Yeah. Yeah.
If there's a group out there talking about us, let us know. It could be a good topic for the show.
Yeah,
We need to
right.
get some politicians and things on here to talk about this. And I have this argument with family members who shall remain unnamed who live in lower cost areas. And they're like, well, you guys are idiots for living there. And I'm like, well, you're welcome that we live here. Because know that you binge watch Netflix. Where did that come from? Here, right? You've got all
Right.
your smartphone devices. Where did that technology start? Oh, that's right, California. And you enjoy the produce that you can't grow there. Where'd that come from? That came from here too. So, like a third of the world's nuts are grown in California.
No argument from my relatives back in the Midwest. They think all the nuts are grown in
Well,
California.
there is that angle. But it's like, don't be ridiculous.
Maybe a bad example.
The California economy has benefited the American economy so disproportionately. I think that all of the boo-hooing is a bit boring. And I'm just kind of sick of it. And we do need to take a look at, can we just talk about leveling the playing field a little bit? It's not our fault that it costs 10 times as much to live here.
And I'll give you one other one we've talked about in the past on other shows that's not real commonly known. We are a net exporter. The state contributes more in terms of federal tax dollars than we get back.
Exactly.
Some states are, I forget the name of it, but they
net zero or
yeah, they get more than they contribute to the federal economy here. We're the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, through med tech, technology overall. I mean, for heaven's sakes, I grew up in Silicon Valley. We know why it's called that, right? The microchip technology was born where I was born.
Growing in
California
the fields
is
out
the
there.
hub of innovation for the world.
Globally.
But if you went back to my friends and relatives in the Midwest, they would gladly say, hope it falls into the sea, hope it crashes. And why don't we just go away? They would love to see California fail or secede and pull out of the country. And I said, do you know what that would do to the federal economy?
They will watch their own lives fail then as well.
They can all just turn in their
No, they will.
smartphones and their
that
TVs.
it's not doom and gloom. That's simple economics.
Right.
Well, because we contribute so much to the economic, so much to the innovation, so much to the tax dollars of this country. We put in more than we get back.
Can we talk for just a minute about where we're sitting right now?
Yeah, right. The innovation hub in here in Orange County and the Applied Innovation Center here at the University of California, Irvine. This building is crawling with people coming up with cool new ideas that will extend your life. In this case, it's mostly med tech and med devices.
That's my point.
You're going to live longer, live better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're finding cures for disorders and diseases.
I know I'm grateful for my pacemaker.
Yeah,
I don't know if I did little
You don't talk about that
segue
enough, but
here.
yeah, right.
Yeah, I met the woman who was on the design team who developed the first pacemaker I ever got, quite by accident. And I don't know who was more shocked.
Wow.
Because I was in my early 30s, and she looked at me like, "Wait, what? Which pacemaker do you have?" And I told her it was a Medtronic, Kappa 700 actually. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea. I thought it was."
Medtronics is right next door here. They're
Yeah, she's like, "I thought it was going to be some older person with blue hair." I'm like, "No,
well, you do have blue
But
hair.
you do have blue
I did
hair.
blue hair. Yes, but at the time I was still on a catwalk every weekend. I was modeling. I was working. I was a
Right.
big part of the community. No one knew I wasn't sick, but yeah, I have a bad heart. So all of those people around the world who have benefited from our med tech, it's like, come on, stop with the disparaging comments. You're welcome.
Yeah, right.
You're welcome to visit anytime. We're very nice.
But don't stay. Go home.
All right. Part of what we love to do on the show also is talk about everything with the SoCal state of mind. And as everyone knows, Wendy is actually quite community minded. She really not only talks about philanthropy, but she invests herself. And she's involved in two phenomenal organizations through her own personal interests, but also her company, Veracity Real Estate Company, supports. What's going on right now with Veterans Legal Institute and the Shea Center? We have a couple of events. Right?
I love those two charities so much. So the first event coming up is the Shea Center's annual barbecue and fair, which always sells out. I was so annoyed last year I couldn't get tickets.
Tell people what the Shea Center. If you don't, go Google Impact OC, our public affairs show. We've had them on a couple of times. They've been on other shows through the years. They do an amazing job using horses as therapy.
Yeah, it's horse therapy. And I had no idea this existed until a friend of mine had a stroke, and she was going there for her physical therapy, her occupational therapy. So what they do is they use specially trained horses, and anyone from infancy to senior citizen status who had
Autistic people, blind people, veterans with post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
Something about getting on the horse. The horse feels what you're feeling and reacts to it, and you react to the horse, and there is something magic that goes on.
It is magic. You need to schedule a tour. Anyone who has a company or works for a company in Southern California, contact sheacenter.org and say, we want to do a work day there. Do a volunteer day and get embedded and see the
I didn't
good
know you
that
could
they're
do
doing.
that, yeah.
You can. It's an incredible thing. So many people who have these physical and what do you call it? People who are on the spectrum who
Cognitive,
have sensory,
right.
sensory and cognitive issues. Many of them have far faster remedy of their symptoms and more lasting results from this therapy. It's incredible what they do with the horses, and it's
Imagine getting a blind child on a horse.
right? And it's obviously horses. So it is incredibly expensive to run this therapy program, but it is one of the most effective for people who have this wide variety of issues. I cannot express urgently enough how important funding this is. So buy a ticket to their barbecue, which is incredible. It's at the facility, so you can see it. Hurry, though. It's September
Where's it?
17th.
In San Juan's Capistrano?
Yeah, it's a very northern edge of San Juan Capistrano. So,
And this is a pretty affordable, approachable fundraiser for most people. The tickets are $65 a person?
Yeah, and I think that it's 40 or 50 for senior citizens, and children under a certain age get in for free. And there's face painting, and there's games, and
So it's a great way to support the organization and learn about it and really have a fun-filled day.
and find ways that you too can sign up and donate your time. If you don't have money, I completely respect that. Then give them a little bit of your precious time. Yeah.
So that's one, and they're a
That's
great
one.
group.
They are great. And Veterans Legal Institute. I mean, you all know my late husband Mick. He was my man, um, and he was a Marine. And he met Antoinette Balta through me, and she is this incredible powerhouse of an attorney. And she co-founded.
She's a force of nature.
She
really
is. She co-founded Veterans Legal Institute, and they provide pro bono legal services for veterans and enlisted people who are at risk. They're at risk of homelessness. They're at risk of health issues. They need perhaps re-education and retooling to re-enter the civilian workforce. They are at risk for in so many ways. And her charity tirelessly advocates for them and manages to get the best legal minds in the state to come to their defense, to keep these people safe, to keep them housed, to keep them employed, to keep them well, so that they can come back and contribute to society.
Do they
And also for them to be able to receive the veteran benefits that they are
That's what I
so
was going to say.
deserved. Yes.
Because that's not an easy process.
It is
to get those,
not.
right?
The Veterans Administration isn't it the largest part of our government, and it is
Huge,
just
yeah.
maddening to try and navigate that bureaucratic quagmire. So these people, these brave soldiers who risk their lives, who are entitled to these benefits, they give up because it's too difficult to try to get it, because they get a clerk here and a clerk there and a roadblock here and there who just don't care.
We've literally had veterans come in and say, I'm disabled. I've got something happen. It might be visible. My hand blew off, or it might be something internal, post-traumatic stress. But whatever it is, there's a problem, and they give up. The benefits are there, but it's such a labyrinth. It's such a hurdle to run,
Right.
a gauntlet to run, that they give up along the way.
Exactly. So Veterans Legal, their mission is dedicated to those very people. And I think the most fun fundraiser that they have is their Lawyers for Warriors Gala. I mean,
I love that name.
love the name, love the gala. And again, my company, Veracity Real Estate, is underwriting the auction portion of it. It's going to be at the Lion Air Museum, so an incredible
that's
venue.
cool.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool space. And that's on November 7th. You can still get tickets. It's really affordable. I mean, considering my last gala was $1,000 a plate, this one's $150. So buy a table. You know, people who have companies, buy a table, show up, participate in the auction.
So how would they do that?
Go to vetslegal.com.
And also,
Simple.
we are curating, Wendy is chairing this committee along with Gina Odo, her senior agent, the auction committee. And so we are seeking experiences, high-end
Yes.
items, dining, things like that to put together packages for the silent and live auction.
A lot of us in Orange County have access to things we forget are valuable to others. So if you have a vacation home in Lake Tahoe, if you have a flat in New York City, if you would donate a stay at any of these far-flung properties, it's easy for you. You get a tax write-off for the value of the contribution, and it generates a lot of money for these veterans in need. Or there are people who have really, really super luxury cars. Figure out how to insure it and sign a waiver and let them drive your car for a weekend, and
That
throw
would
in.
be wild. Now there's a thought. Wow.
I know several
Rather than
people-
just let it sit in the garage.
Most people who have cars like that, they have several of them. There are ways to ensure this experience. There are people that I know who are pilots who pilot airplanes and helicopters. Donate your time and the gas, obviously, and donate a tour over Orange County, or a sunset tour or something. People with yachts, donate time on your yachts. There are things you can do where you're not writing a check. Checks are great. I'm not saying don't write a check. But after the COVID pandemic, these experiences are of equal value. So if you've
Well,
got...
I value the experience of having you come in each and every week and share this with us.
Thank you, Paul. I love you too, man.
Well, all right. So how do people get in touch with you if they want to connect with any of these people or something? Because you're a connector.
I'm a total connector. You can either connect with me by going to my website, which is realveracity.com. That's RealVeracity. And on the top, you'll see contact us. It's that simple. So just click on that button and give me your info, or call me or text me. My phone number it's out there in the universe. It's not a secret. It's 949-870-2424. Or shoot me an email, Wendy@realveracity.com. I'm super easy to find. I'd love to hear from you.
Okay. Kara, anything else? Did we cover it?
We're covered. Thanks, Paul.
All right.
Stay cool this week.
newsworthy podcast, wink, wink, wink. What's even more exciting is becoming an NPR supporter for the very first time. Find out how at donate.npr.org.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Justice Department is on a deadline to file a response to former President Donald Trump's request for a special master to oversee documents removed from his Florida estate. NPR's Windsor Johnson reports the FBI seized more than a dozen boxes from the property earlier this month, some containing classified information.